Dear friends, welcome to another episode of The Informant. In today's video, we're diving deep into Japan's recent defense policy changes, a nation long known for its pacifist stance since the end of World War II. Now, with rising threats from China and North Korea, Japan is shifting gears towards military strengthening in an increasingly tense geopolitical environment. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. For much of the post-war period following its defeat in World War II, Japan focused on economic growth and left its security in the hands of its main ally, the United States. However, the rise of China, North Korea's nuclear arsenal, and wavering trust in U.S. protection have reshaped Japan's security strategy. Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022 shattered any lingering illusions that peace could be taken for granted. This shift in global dynamics has heavily influenced Japan's new defense policies. In late 2022, Prime Minister Fumio Kishida unveiled a series of reforms that build upon the efforts of his predecessors, Shinzo Abe and Yoshihide Suga, to bolster Japan's defenses and create a more credible military deterrent. The government has committed to raising defense spending to 2% of its GDP by 2027, an increase of over 60% compared to 2022. This boost includes acquiring long-range missiles, which would allow Japan's Self-Defense Forces, SDF, to strike beyond their borders, and preparing its military for potential warfare. A more formidable Japan could dramatically alter the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific region. If these plans materialize, Japan could become the third largest defense spender in the world, rising from the 10th position it held in 2022. But how ready is Japan to once again embrace the role of a military power? The defense budget is set to increase by another 17% in 2024, reaching a record 8 trillion yen, or around $51 billion at current rates, the highest in the history of Japan's self-defense forces. From 2013 to 2022, defense spending grew by an average of just 1% per year. Hundreds of new missiles are set to be delivered in the coming year, and command and control structures are being modernized. Still, challenges remain. Japan's defense industry is underdeveloped, its currency is weak, and there is little enthusiasm among the youth to join the self-defense forces. Moreover, public support for a stronger military continues to face significant resistance. To understand where Japan's military is headed, we must first look at where it began. The country's post-war constitution, drafted under American occupation, was designed to demilitarize Japan. But when the Korean War broke out in 1950, Japan, with U.S. backing, established an armed police force that eventually evolved into the Self-Defense Forces, SDF. For decades, Japanese politicians kept the SDF's growth tightly controlled, with an informal spending cap of about 1% of GDP, which was implemented in 1976. As memories of the war faded and new threats emerged, the SDF's image began to change. Their disaster relief efforts after the major earthquakes in 1995 and 2011 helped make the SDF one of Japan's most trusted institutions. Today, over 90% of Japanese people view them positively. However, the idea of a more muscular Japan remained controversial until recently. In 2015, when Shinzo Abe pushed to reinterpret the constitution to allow Japan to defend its allies beyond its borders, tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets, though the proposal ultimately passed. Since the war in Ukraine, opposition to a stronger military has diminished considerably. The global geopolitical context has shifted public opinion, making a stronger Japanese military more acceptable. Bigger budgets and growing public support have allowed the self-defense forces to implement long-discussed reforms. The command structure is being overhauled to enable smoother coordination between different services and Japan's key ally, the United States. In the past, the SDF chief functioned as both the military advisor to political leaders and the operational commander, while also communicating with multiple American counterparts. A new Joint Operations Command is set to launch next year, taking over responsibilities for war planning and exercise execution. Long-range missiles were once off-limits under Japan's doctrine of exclusive defense, which held that its forces should only have enough capability to repel an invasion. But now, Japan's military is moving to acquire 400 Tomahawk missiles from the United States, with a range of about 1,000 miles. In a recent training session at an American base south of Tokyo, Japanese officers tested missile flight paths in contested environments similar to what they might face in a conflict with China. Maintenance budgets have doubled since 2022, allowing the self-defense forces to make better use of its ships and aircraft. It's estimated that only half of Japan's military assets were operational in 2022. Ammunition spending has tripled, and contracts have been signed to repair over 20,000 facilities across the country. While these steps are encouraging, they highlight how much more work remains. One of the biggest obstacles is financial. In 2022, defense planners assumed an exchange rate of 108 yen to the dollar. Today, that rate is closer to 160 yen per dollar, making everything significantly more expensive. Additionally, the government has been slow to raise taxes on income, businesses, and cigarettes, raising questions about the sustainability of Japan's larger defense budget. While most Japanese support increased defense spending, they are less willing to pay higher taxes to fund it. It's worth noting that Japan has one of the most indebted governments in the world. Building and operating new equipment also presents challenges. Japan's defense industry has long been stifled by export restrictions on arms, and ramping up production will take time. But perhaps the most significant challenge is demographic. In an aging Japan with a declining population, labor is in short supply. The SDF is struggling to meet recruitment targets. Only 9% of the population is willing to fight for their country, and last year, the SDF fell short of recruiting even half its target. This suggests that while respect for the SDF is high, the Japanese public's willingness to completely abandon its post-war pacifist identity remains limited. Many in Japan are wary of repeating the militaristic mistakes of the past. If you value independent journalism and want to support our work, consider buying us a coffee through the QR code on the screen. Your contribution is essential for us to continue bringing quality analysis and information. Stay tuned for more updates, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for the latest analyses and insights on the world's most urgent geopolitical issues.